The Joker is widely considered to be one of the most popular characters to ever be written into a comic. His dedication to chaos and allegiance to no one made him a fan favorite that people found fascinating and oddly relatable. Arguably the most popular rendition of the character was in 2008 when Heath Ledger took on the role in the movie The Dark Knight. This would ultimately become the role he was most known for, but unfortunately passed away before the movie was released in theaters. His absence in the third movie also removed any opportunities for us to get any more of a backstory, which means we'll forever have to imagine where he came from. And that's what this video is about. Where did the Joker come from? What was his background? How did he have seemingly unlimited resources at his disposal? And how was he so good at what he did? And the reality is, there's only one answer to this question. He's either a CIA operative or a CIA operative who has gone rogue. Once we're told there are no records about him, he has no fingerprints, no DNA, no dental records, his clothes are handmade, which then brings us to his scars. In the movie, he talks about having two conflicting stories, one where his wife rejects him and the other where his father abuses him. And this is where we might have to consider that he was never talking about the physical scars on his face, but instead referring to the scars he wore on his heart. Since it's more than likely the Joker got his scars from either being in combat or tortured, you can assume when he returned home from war, his wife rejected him because of his facial deformities. As for his father, it could mean he was initially abused by him as a child and created the monster that was so effective in war. But from the way the Joker does and says things, it's pretty likely the stories around his scars were not speaking specifically about the ones on his face. And you couple all of that with his skill set, and there's really no other option. The man has the skill set of a CIA agent. So let's dive into those skills exactly. The element that really sticks out, what most of us can agree on, is that his ability to plan things tactically. And yes, I know that's part of the Joker's character. He's insanely smart. He has this ability to plan things. But since this story is set in a world, in a universe where things are much more grounded, his background, his backstory, they're going to be much more grounded as well, much more realistic. Drink your water. And in our world today, the world we live in, you're not going to have those skills without having been involved in some type of special military operation. The way he set up the Harvey and Rachel kidnapping, that amount of planning, the amount of people he had to contact, the amount of elements that had to be in sync, he clearly has experience running operations to this level. And the only places, the only areas of the world that you can get this type of experience at that level is going to be in the Middle East or South America, where the CIA is notorious for helping stage coups. Which there's a few quotes that we're going to go over later in the video that the Joker gives that really give away that he's most likely from the Middle East or South America. Then there's his knowledge of how the police were going to escort Harvey Dent when they thought he was Batman. Hit that subscription button and turn on notifications. From knowing where the helicopter was going to go and how to take it down, to understanding what they would do or what route they would take if their original route was blocked. His access to all this information, his understanding to how it all works, is another major giveaway that he has to have been involved at this level of planning somewhere else. He's got access to government uniforms. He gets access to the commissioner's office to get his cup. He gets into the judge's car with the bomb, which is just insane planning, but it also goes to show the level of connections he has. His ability to coordinate all of these attacks is not going to be accomplished without having an extensive roster of assets who are helping you achieve your goals. The in-depth planning, the execution of these attacks happen at such a fast pace and would require him to have access to networks that more than likely only people on the inside would have. This really plays more into the idea that he could actually still be a CIA asset, which again we'll get to later in the video. And for him to plan all this and actually execute it, it shows an insane intelligence level. And he proves this when he's being interrogated by Batman, when the commissioner basically says, "Where are they?" And he says, "What time is it?" And he says, "Well, depending on what time it is, that will depend on where they are, as they could be in different places." He remembers the phone number, the cell phone in the guy's chest. And I know that sounds kind of funny to think, wow, he remembered a cell phone number, but again, he has so much going on up there that an insane, crazy person who just snapped and decided to take over the city one day is not going to be able to do all these things. Then there's his knowledge of weaponry, firearms, and combat skills. The fact that he's able to build bombs like that shows that, again, he's been trained to do these things. And the way he's building these bombs, the way he's setting them up, I mean, these are not just rookie styles of doing these things. These are, again, very tactical. These are very high-level professional ways of doing them, and he would only learn them by being taught by other professionals. And now, of course, he uses a lot of different weapons, machine guns, pistols. He has the RPG he shoots from the back of the 18-wheeler. Some would argue that his access to these high-level weapons, the RPG especially, which would mean he probably has access to some type of arms dealer, someone he probably met in his time with the CIA, or if he's still with the CIA, someone he still knows. But before the scene where the Joker burns all the money and he tells the mob guy that all his men work for him, that would mean all the men we've seen previously were working for the Joker, and if they were so well armed, it didn't come from the mob, it means he had his own resources. Which would probably mean he's still working for the CIA, but again, we'll get to that part later in the video. Now, the biggest example we're gonna have is the fact that he uses psychological warfare in everything that he does. And yes, I know that's part of the Joker's shtick, but at the same time, again, remember, we're in this realistic world where he's just not a crazy guy. He clearly has a background. And if you look at the way he does things things exactly like the CIA would. If you're familiar with the history of the CIA and those coups they've staged throughout history, you know their favorite playbook is going to be one that involves the area they're trying to take over, destabilizing. What does destabilizing mean? It means basically taking all the people there that are currently getting along and making them fight one another. And that's exactly what the Joker does. He enters the crime syndicate and basically unifies them against Batman, but then turns them on one another once he takes all their money and basically sets them up. Another great example of the psychological warfare, what the Joker can do to people's minds, is when they're in the jail cell, when he's sitting there with that one guy and asks him how many of his friends he's killed. As the scene progresses, you can tell the Joker knows exactly what he's doing. He's patiently setting this guy up because he knows he's going to break him and make him angry, which of course sets him up to be able to take his weapon, take him hostage, and then make the phone call. But you could just tell the Joker knew exactly what to say in that moment to set him up, to put him in that position to make him vulnerable. And then of course there's the final scene with the bombs on the boats. Basically the Joker is telling everyone that he doesn't believe in humanity, that people are terrible and they won't try and save each other, which is a viewpoint you'd probably have if you were once CIA and a major part of what you did was entering a society and destabilizing it to push your own agenda and instill your own government. I feel like you probably don't have much respect for people if that's what you do for a living. Now there's a few quotes in the movie that actually kind of give it away that he was some level of special operations military.
Or a truckload of soldiers will be blowing up. Nobody panics because it's all part of the plan. But when I say that one little old mare will die, well, then everyone loses their minds.
This is clearly a glimpse into his past, something he's experienced. This is something that he probably has PTSD about. Has he lost friends? Was he involved in one of these accidents? We're not sure, but again, it's something he's probably referencing from his past. In the interrogation scene, when he tells Batman not to start with the head because they'll get all woozy, this is him telling the audience, him telling Batman that he has experience in these situations. He's been on the other side of the table doing the interrogating. This again would lend more evidence that he's been involved in CIA operations, special military operations. Almost every one of my channel's viewers is not subscribed to the channel. Do me a huge favor and hit that subscription button. We're trying to get monetized. My dog and I. Which then leads to one of the most important quotes we hear in the movie when he says, when all the chips fall down, they'll abandon you. Which is probably the biggest bit of evidence we get that he is a CIA agent or has gone rogue. Editor's note here, as I was watching this movie for the second time in 3 days, I recognized just how powerful this scene was. The Joker is finally giving us a little bit of insight into his past, and he's speaking like some assassin, some high-level killer, a soldier, basically a tool of destruction that was discarded after his mission was accomplished, and it seems like he had issues reintegrating back into society, which is something a lot of soldiers unfortunately experience. After you've endured some of the worst horrors, some of the worst traumas even imaginable on this planet, and when you return to society and you're surrounded by people that have no idea those type of traumas, those type of horrors even exist, it can make it really hard to just blend back in with the world. And if you want to peel this onion back even further, you can look at how the Joker talks about the hypocrisy of society, wanting to deal with things like terrorism with brute force, but then not wanting to know how it's done. At some point or another, whether it was the Middle East or South America, it seems like the Joker was involved in a coup or some type of military operation that went wrong and he got abandoned. And it would make sense they would come back to get his vengeance on the country that really hurt him, but at the same time, the way he goes about it and him coming for Batman, who again had nothing to do with what happened to him if he was abandoned in another country, doesn't really make sense. Which of course I recognize nothing with the Joker is supposed to make sense, so that could be part of it, but this is where we get to the idea that he actually could be a CIA agent sent to Gotham to destabilize both the crime syndicate and Batman himself. As we talked about earlier, the Joker's strategy, the way he goes about doing things, is straight out the CIA playbook. The first thing he does is destabilizes the crime syndicate when he gets to Gotham. He gains their trust and unifies them around defeating Batman. Then he tactically and systematically defeats them by one, turning them on each other, taking their money, killing all their leaders, and essentially taking all their foot soldiers. Let's just drink your water. And by the end of the movie, the mob, the crime syndicate, they're essentially useless and gone. Not only would the CIA want to dismantle such a powerful organization in Gotham with that crime mob, those crime bosses, they're most definitely going to want to inquire and look into who the identity of Batman is. And what better way to do that than by setting up this whole situation and giving a solution to it by saying, hey, Batman, just show yourself and it's over. Not only that, the Joker actually pushes Gotham to accept mass surveillance. And even though we see Lucius Fox make the point that he will leave, Wayne Enterprises if this stays there, if that technology isn't destroyed, and we do see it destroyed at the end, this could have been a massive opportunity for the CIA to test it out. You know how the government's always talking about opportunities? Then there's a really small detail at the beginning of the movie that most people tend to miss. The bank manager mentions very high up people in DC having interest in the banks, which would mean the federal government is probably involved in laundering their money here, or at some level is involved with the mob, which would then give credence, would give evidence to the fact, to the idea that maybe the CIA sent the Joker to Gotham to help complete whatever goals they had had at hand, to maybe deal with Batman before he got to all their money as well. The CIA could have had just as much interest in protecting that money as much as the crime bosses did. Or it's possible that the CIA wanted to just clean house. Maybe the current mob would slowly turn against the CIA, maybe not cutting them in as much money as they said they would, and it's like, hey, it's time to just take them out and start all over. Which is essentially exactly what the Joker does. He goes in there, destabilizes, destroys, and then they're all gone. And of course, there's the idea that the Joker has unlimited resources at his disposal. From the very start, he's well funded, he's well armed, he has access to high-level explosives, he has access to high-level weapons, he has access to disguises, he has access to government uniforms, which we talked about earlier, something that just an ordinary person wouldn't have. And it seems like he gets everything he needs very quickly. This dude got all those bombs inside of the hospital, both buildings where Rachel and Harvey Dent were, both of the ferries at the end of the movie. He had someone operate on that guy and put a cell phone inside of him, which was a bomb itself, or the Joker had already put bombs inside the precinct. There really isn't any other way to explain any of this outside of the fact that the federal government must be helping them every step of the way. The sheer manpower and pace of everything happening is actually impossible without green lights being shown from a higher force. Near everything you see the Joker do in this movie can be attributed to being a CIA operative or someone that has gone rogue. I just can't imagine any other scenario in this universe where he could have come from. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Am I crazy? Is this silly? Or do you think this is an actual possibility? Have you ever actually thought about where he came from or his background? Let me know if you have any other ideas. If you enjoyed this type of content, hit that subscription button, as I'll be looking to drop these types of videos, taking just random anecdotes from random movies and just breaking them down and talking more about them. And if you have any ideas of things you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments. All right, that's enough yapping for today. Go out there and do something great. And if you enjoyed this video, think about watching either of these videos that's on the screen.